Tristan Jackson has been on a different level this preseason. What's going on, guys? Welcome in the Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and coming up on today's show, I wanted to do a deep dive into number 8, Tristan Jackson. If I had to pick my biggest winner from the preseason, it's either him or Jalen Nailor, which we'll also talk about here on today's show. But before we dive into that, guys, I was looking at the analytics here at Chat Sports, and I was scrolling across our Bears channel, and I saw they got 549 likes on their video yesterday. Can we beat that? Can we get the 550 likes? I would really appreciate it. But free and easy way to help out the show, just hit that thumbs up icon. But let's talk about Tristan Jackson. As you know, like I just said, he is one of the biggest winners for the Vikings during the preseason session. And here are his total stats, having 7 receptions, 139 yards, 2 touchdowns, 19.9 yards per catch. Had that sweet streak route that J.J. McCarthy threw him in the first preseason game where he just smoked the DB. The one only negative I will say from Jackson from the preseason was J.J. McCarthy's interception. Went back and looked at the film on that, and somebody broke it down. He was supposed to really cut off that route, but he ended up, obviously taking it more upfield and ended up being a pick. But he also had a nasty back shoulder against the Cleveland Browns the other day. It was just a filthy catch. Literally, it was Tristan Jackson just one-on-one from about the 20-yard line. Nick Mullins put it right on his left shoulder. He just turned around real quick, got the toe tap in. It was a freaky catch, and that's the one thing about Tristan Jackson I never really thought he had was the 50-50 balls. Obviously, he was always a good route runner. He could always create, separation in a phone booth, but I didn't think he had the 50-50, balls that he's catching at a pretty high level. And also, I didn't know he had the top-end speed. He caught a jet sweep against the Cleveland Browns, and he almost took it to the house, but he got tripped up. But we saw that elite athleticism. We saw that top-end speed, and it's something I never really thought he had. And listen, more on Jackson, and he's got a really interesting career path, and I'll show you guys that more in depth here in a second. But he was undrafted out of Syracuse. He's got pretty good size on him. He's a 6'1" wide receiver. He plays with a sense of physicality, and his 190-pound frame helps that. But how he fared out at the NFL Scouting Combine, he ran a 4.5-second 40-yard dash. His vert was 36 inches. So again, he's not like a top tier athlete, but he is still a very good athlete at that receiver spot. And we saw that finally come to fruition during the preseason. And, my favorite thing on Jackson is, and why I will always root for this guy, is just what he has gone through in the NFL. And, he's practice squads, being on the roster. We'll show you guys that whole 9 here in a little bit. But, this was also a guy who necessarily didn't really light it up in college. I mean, he only had just over 1,200 receiving yards in his entire collegiate career, 86 receptions, 12 touchdowns, 14.2 yards per catch. And if you're putting up these numbers at Syracuse, big reason why he went undrafted. But I went back and I was watching his college tape, and he plays just the same. Just a very smooth route runner, doesn't really try to do too much. He's not going to really jump off the screen. In my opinion, he kind of reminds me of just a faster KJ Osborne. He's just got a little more juice. I think he's honestly probably got a little bit better hands, as we saw drops be an issue for KJ this past season. But I do want to point this out. Why am I such a big supporter in Tristan Jackson? It's because of his timeline with the Vikings. So he originally was a part of the Rams practice squad. And then in 2021, he was brought to the Vikings practice squad. Then in 22, he signed a future/reserve contract, and then that was waived, re-signed to the practice squad. And then he was waived again, re-signed to the practice squad. And then finally last year, he was brought to the active roster. But then he was waived again and re-signed to the practice squad. And then again, in 2024, he was signed to a future/reserve contract. And now finally to where we are right now is he is looking to make the 53-man roster. But any NFL player, or just honestly anybody in life who has had a tougher career path, is somebody I will always root for. And I will always root for Jackson. I remember actually last year, right around this time, I kept seeing him just pop up on my Twitter, just making a couple viral plays here and there. And I was like, keep your eyes on that Tristan Jackson guy. And actually, Will Scott, who used to work here at Chat Sports, went to Syracuse. And I remember asking him about Tristan Jackson, and Will was like, oh, I loved him. He was a super good guy, just a class act. when he was playing his collegiate ball at Syracuse. So he's always a guy I'll root for. And I'll tell you what, he is going to be a lock to make this roster. I think he's honestly moved ahead of guys like Brandon Powell on this depth chart. But let's just say the Vikings do keep 5 wide receivers. It's going to be Jefferson, Addison, Naylor. I think they're all locks. And I think Trishton Jackson is by far that 4th receiver. And then you got guys like Powell, Jay-Sean Jones, Thayer Thomas, Trent Sherfield duking it out for that 5th spot. And, I do want to connect this back to Jordan Addison here. I am a believer that Addison will turn it around following his 2, problems he's had off the field over the last 2 off seasons. I do believe he will turn it around. But the Vikings also need an insurance plan. They can't just bank on Addison, obviously turn it around. They need to have a plan in place for just in case something happens, maybe during the year or next offseason, they have an ability to move off him, and it's not like this huge drop-off from the top 2 wide receivers to your 3rd guy. And having a guy like Tristan Jackson step up, having a guy like Jalen Nailor step up is so huge for that. So, maybe the Vikes, even if they decide to trade Addison for maybe a future 2nd-round pick or whatever it may be, it's nice to have those 2 behind, top 2 guys on this team. But you guys let me know, will Tristan Jackson make the 53-man roster? Give me a Y for yes or an N for no down below in the comments section. I think this is a lock. I think there's no doubt that he does, or there's no chance that he doesn't make the roster. But you guys let me know your thoughts down below. Now, coming up next year on the show, I do want to go into a deep dive on Jalen Nailor. As Speedy Naylor has been one of my favorite players since he's joined the Minnesota Vikings, and it finally seems like a breakout season is coming for him. So a deep dive on Naylor here in a second. But first off, I want to tell you guys about today's presenting sponsor, and that is Game Time. If you guys download the Game Time app and use promo code ChatSports, we'll hook you guys up with $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, first purchase only, but use promo code ChatSports for $20 off. Now, Game Time is the best ticket purchasing app out there right now because of the views from your seat feature, which is my favorite feature on the app. So you guys know exactly what you guys will be looking at before you even buy the ticket to whatever event it may be. And if you guys are looking to go to the Twins games, Vikings games, Timberwolves games, even checking out the Minnesota Wild, Game Time has tickets for all of those. Or even if you're looking to go to a concert in the month of August or September, Game Time is the best way to do so. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code ChatSports for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's talk about Speedy Naylor here. And is he finally going to break out for the purple and gold? Jefferson in a podcast recently was asked about some young receivers across the National Football League, and he actually listed Jalen Nailor as a guy that he believes is going to break out. He also said Malik Neighbors and Tank Dell in that conversation as well. But Naylor's looked the part in the preseason, and we always knew he had that big playability just because of his natural speed. And, averaging 23.5 yards per catch in the preseason. He's only had, I think it was in total 4 drives, and he's had 94 yards on 4 catches. We see that pop. We see that elite athleticism. We see that twitch, as he's always been a fluid route runner. It's just always came down to injuries with him so far. And, frankly, he hasn't really had that much of an opportunity. Like, you've always had KJ Osborne in that 3rd wide receiver spot, and you always had, some combination of either Jefferson and Thielen or Jefferson and Addison. So even if KJ hopped up the wide receiver 2, there still wasn't room for the wide receiver 3 spot. But I think he's a lock to be that for the Vikings this upcoming year. But it's going to come down to him staying healthy. And, he's dealt with hamstrings. He's dealt with concussions over the past 2 seasons. This was every single time he was actually on the injury report for the Vikings over the last 2 years. But he had this hamstring in 22. It came back in 23, sidelining him for multiple weeks. And then he was actually sidelined for the last 4 games last season with a concussion. Now, I don't want to say like the Vikings need Jalen Nailor to stay healthy, because even if he, knock on wood, something does happen to him and he misses the whole year, like it's not going to completely lose the season for Minnesota. But if they want to be a top 10, top 7 offense, and let's just say Sam Darnold does end up popping and he ends up playing his best ball in his career, he ends up being like a top 15-ish quarterback, this upcoming season, having Jalen Nailor healthy is huge because let's just say Addison, either he gets suspended or that high ankle injury is something more severe, and then Naylor gets hurt. Are you going to roll out Jefferson, Trishton Jackson, and then like Brandon Powell as your main 3 wide receivers? That group's looking a little more dicey. So Naylor, stay healthy, and you're finally going to have that breakout year for the purple and gold. But I'll ask you guys this. As these two have definitely been the biggest winners so far of the preseason, you guys just let me know. Who has impressed you more? Give me an 8 for Tristan Jackson or an 83 for Jalen Nailor. If you guys also want to give me a follow on Twitter, that's the handle right there, at Pat Siepman. If you guys do so, I'll give you guys a follow right back. So that link for you guys is in the comments and description of today's show. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys next time. Let's go Vikes.